We continue our devotional series in the book of Proverbs, and looking at Proverbs certainly as a book of wisdom, but really looking at it as a book of life, a book of how to live well, preserve life, and even receive life. And the beginning of that life-giving wisdom is the acknowledgement of the Lord, the fear of the Lord. And now we're going to go into how that acknowledgement of the Lord changes how we approach different areas of our life, friendship, conflict, the way we handle money. And today we're going to consider justice, rendering unto each other the dignity, the respect, the kindness due the image of God that's in all of us. Do you experience justice? Is it your sense that you're treated fairly? You know, we look at the news and we see images of crime, riot, war, people responding to inhumane treatment with further inhumane acts. How do we live justly in an unjust world? And that's why we turn to the Word of God for guidance, for wisdom, and even power to live as it calls us to live. I'm going to read a brief passage from Proverbs chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. This is the introduction of the whole book, which sets the trajectory. What is the trajectory of the book of Proverbs, this book of life? Verse 1, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing. Dealing in what? Dealing in righteousness, justice, and equity. What is equity? I looked it up in the dictionary. There were three definitions that are used in common parlance. You know, one is the way we tend to use it most. We talk about the wealth we've built up in our house. The definition is the value of a mortgaged property after deduction of charges against it. People who have built up a significant amount of equity in their homes. That's a way to use it. Another definition has to do with shares in a company. The values of shares issued by a company. For instance, he owns 62% of the group's equity. The plural is equities, and trading in equities, being governed by the rules of the market. But the way I want to talk about it here briefly is the first definition in the dictionary I was using. Equity, the quality of being fair and impartial. Equity in treatment. We talk a lot about equity in our day and age, but do you feel like you've been treated fairly? I have to tell you, we're not good at practicing it. In fact, I've been in team settings where I'm trying to have people sit at the table because they seem to have a right to be at a decision-making table, and as I argue for that, I say, hey, it's a matter of equity. I've literally had people laugh at me saying, that's ridiculous. Why do you want that person at this table? We're not good at it. We're not good at making space for people and treating them fairly. How does it make you feel when you don't receive equity in treatment, when you're treated poorly or differently because you're from, the wrong class of people, you're from the wrong part of town, maybe you're the wrong gender, maybe you're an outsider, an immigrant, maybe you're made to feel outside because of your Christian faith at times. How does it make you feel? Well, most of us feel angry, but it can also leave us feeling ashamed. It undermines our dignity. There are people who are deciding who are inside the circle and who are outside the circle, and if we're not decision makers, oftentimes we're people who are reinforcing the inner and the outer, those who are inside and those who are outside, by complying with those standards, and we reinforce it. And in the process, even if we're not the ones deciding who's in and out, we are still violating equity. We're still violating righteousness and justice when we put people on the outside or agree to it. We dishonor each other. Now, along with many other miseries of sin, Christ came to change all that, to challenge it. Certainly, he demonstrated what it is to live justly, but he also accomplished justice while showing mercy, satisfying the debt of our sin, and then crediting that to us by his mercy, and changing forever our sense of what righteousness and equity is. God is not content just to judge those made in the image of God. He honors the image by satisfying judgment for us, restoring it in us and among us. And righteousness and equity is not simply about making a right call, but now seeing people who perhaps aren't worthy, to call them to live in a worthy fashion, to see restoration in them. It's no longer enough simply to make a right judgment call. We need to be part of seeing people restored, to see the image of God restored. That is righteousness. That is equity. This week, as you think about how you're interacting with your brothers and sisters, are you treating them fairly? Are you seeking their restoration? What needs to change to make that happen in your life? I'm praying that you have not only the wisdom, but the courage and the strength to do it. Blessings on you all.